there's a woman most of Wall Street has worked very hard to forget. Her name was Hetty Green. In the autumn of 1907, when the American banking system was hours away from total collapse, and J.P. Morgan himself was locking the most powerful men in finance inside his library, trying to figure out who could save the country, it was Hetty, quietly, who had more liquid cash than any individual in the United States. She had been lending money to New York City during financial emergencies for years. As the panic broke, she extended another major loan to keep the city solvent. She did it from an office she shared with a clerk, wearing the same black dress she had owned for 15 years. You've been told that financial stability comes from sophistication, complexity, knowing the right funds, the right strategies, the right moves. That's the story. The story is a lie. The most unshakable money rules are almost always the simplest ones, and they've been buried under 40 years of financial industry noise on purpose, because none of them come with a fee attached. 7 of them, starting with the one the industry hates most. Rule 1. Every dollar you stop spending is worth 7. You try to earn. Most financial content is built on a single, unstated assumption that the solution to your money problem is more income, more investments, more hustle. More accounts. Priya is a 44-year-old paralegal in Cincinnati who spent 18 months trying to add $500 a month to her income. She took a weekend job doing legal transcription. She picked up extra cases. She started a side business she never had the energy for. By the end of it, she had made roughly $9,000 extra, pre-tax. Post-tax, somewhere close to $6,300. Then, at her sister's urging, she sat down one Saturday morning and printed 3 years of credit card statements. What she found wasn't dramatic. She wasn't living recklessly, but she was paying for a gym she hadn't used in 11 months. 3 streaming services she'd forgotten about, a meal kit subscription that had quietly auto-renewed after a free trial in 2022, a credit monitoring service her bank already offered free, an app subscription for $14.99 she could not identify. When she added it up, she was spending $487 a month on recurring charges she didn't care about or didn't know existed. Canceling all of them, which took her 90 minutes, increased her annual take-home by $5,844, almost exactly what a year and a half of side hustling had nearly done. Except now it was permanent. Here's what the industry doesn't want named out loud. Using the standard 4% safe withdrawal rate that financial planners use to calculate retirement needs, every $100 of monthly recurring expense requires roughly $30,000 of invested assets to cover it perpetually. So every $100 a month subscription you cancel is mathematically equivalent to adding $30,000 to your retirement portfolio. Priya's $487 a month. She didn't just save money. She did the equivalent of adding $146,000 to her investable net worth in a single Saturday morning. The industry hates this rule because there is no product to sell around it. No fund, no advisor, no fintech app can collect a fee on what you stop spending. Earning more is a product. Spending less is a vacuum. Every dollar removed compounds twice, once in your bank account and once in what you no longer need. Rule 2, measure in hours, not dollars. Vicki Robbins' 1992 book, Your Money or Your Life, introduced a concept the personal finance industry has spent 30 years pretending doesn't exist. She called it life energy. Your salary is not what you earn. Your salary is what you're paid. The difference between the two is the hidden tax the industry will never help you calculate. Deborah is a 43-year-old nurse at a hospital in Louisville. She makes $78,000 a year. By the government's math, that's $37.50 an hour. By her own math, which no one at her HR department ever showed her how to do, it isn't. Subtract her 40-minute round-trip commute each day. Subtract the mental preparation she needs before each shift. Subtract the 2 hours of decompression she needs afterward, because you cannot walk in the door from a Code Blue and cook dinner immediately. Subtract the scrubs, the shoes that don't last 6 months, the coffee she needs to survive. The therapy she started in 2022 because the job was eating her. The delivery food on shift nights because she has nothing left. The higher car insurance because she drives odd hours. When she actually ran the numbers, her real hourly wage came out to $14.30. Not $37.50, $14.30. Which means the $180 dress she bought for a wedding didn't cost her $180. It cost her 12 and a half hours of her life. The $4,200 trip to Cancun cost her 293 hours. nearly 2 months of working weeks. The $38,000 SUV she financed cost her roughly 2,600 hours. 18 months of her life energy, not 18 months of payments. 18 months of her actual self. Once you start measuring purchases in hours of your life instead of dollars in your account, something strange happens. The spending problem that felt psychological suddenly dissolves. Because no one willingly trades 18 months of their life for a vehicle that loses 40% of its value in 5 years. The industry does not want you measuring this. The moment you do, every marketing message becomes transparent. Every loan calculator becomes a stopwatch counting down the hours you have left on Earth. The real hourly wage is the most powerful financial calculation most people will never be shown. And it costs nothing to run. Your time is not your salary. Your time is what's left. Rule 3. Decide once, then never decide again. Daniel Kahneman spent 40 years studying why smart people make predictably stupid decisions. His answer, in a single word, is cognition. Every decision you make burns a finite daily budget of mental energy. When that budget runs out, usually by late afternoon, your brain stops evaluating and starts defaulting. This is why so many people eat clean at breakfast and collapse at dinner. Why you make smart financial plans on Sunday and abandon them by Wednesday night. The rule almost no one applies to money is this: decide once, then never decide again. Rachel is a 38-year-old graphic designer in Providence who used to spend 6 hours every month managing her finances, which meant she spent 6 hours a month rotating between apps, rebalancing portfolios she had already rebalanced, moving cash between accounts based on whichever podcast she had listened to that week, and second-guessing the second-guessing. In 2021, she did something radical. She sat down one Saturday afternoon, decided on exactly 3 things, wrote them on an index card, and taped it to her bathroom mirror. 1. 25% of every paycheck moves automatically into a brokerage account. 2. Every dollar in that brokerage account goes into one total market index fund. No exceptions, no tinkering. 3. She does not look at the account except in the first week of January to verify the deposits happened. That was it. 3 decisions made once for life. 4 years later, she has outperformed almost every investor she knows personally, including the ones who have spent every Sunday night for a decade reading financial news. She has reclaimed roughly 280 hours of her life she used to spend optimizing, and her stress around money has dropped to something she describes as functionally zero. The insight hiding inside this rule is subtle. The enemy of most people's finances is not a bad decision. It is the endless parade of small decisions, each one draining a little more cognitive energy, each one introducing another small opportunity for error. Complexity doesn't just cost you time, it compounds emotional fatigue until eventually you make the one decision that undoes 10 years of discipline. Decide once. Decide well. Then go live your life. The best financial system is the one that asks nothing of you. Rule 4. If it can't fit on one page, it's going to betray you. John D. Rockefeller, the wealthiest man of the 20th century, kept a single small green ledger from the age of 16 until the day he died. He called it Ledger A. Every penny that entered or left his life went into that one book. He carried it with him. He referenced it obsessively. When he died in 1937, at 97 years old, the ledger had become a kind of religious artifact among his family. One book, one continuous record, the most complicated financial life in American history, reduced to something you could hold in one hand. This is not a quirk of history. It is a rule. Lynette is a 47-year-old HR manager in Tucson. In the spring of 2023, her husband of 22 years died of a sudden heart attack on a Tuesday morning. In the weeks that followed, Lynette discovered the financial life he had quietly built for them. 2 joint checking accounts, 4 credit cards, a HELOC on the house, a 401k at his current employer, a rolled-over IRA at a different brokerage, a Roth at a third, a life insurance policy through a fourth, a small investment account he had opened during the 2021 meme stock period, an escrow account for property taxes, 3 recurring transfers she could not trace, and a password manager she did not know the master password to. It took her 11 months, with help from an attorney and an accountant, to reconstruct what they actually owned. The financial system the 2 of them had spent 2 decades building was not wealth. It was architecture. And when the architect disappeared, the architecture nearly collapsed on her. The single-page rule is this: If you cannot write down every account, every recurring transaction, and every asset you own on one side of one sheet of paper, your financial life is too complex for reality. Reality includes death. It includes divorce. It includes cognitive decline, job loss, health emergencies, and long stretches when you simply do not have the bandwidth to manage 14 moving pieces at once. Simplicity isn't aesthetic. Simplicity is insurance. Look at where you actually are right now. Could someone you love, walking into your life with no prior knowledge, understand your entire financial picture in 10 minutes? If the answer is no, you don't have a wealth plan. You have a liability dressed up as a system, and this is the piece nobody says out loud. The financial industry profits from your architecture. Every additional account is a fee stream. Every additional platform is a subscription. Every additional product is a hook. The complexity isn't a side effect of modern finance. It's the business model of modern finance. Rockefeller knew this in 1855, and he still outbuilt every competitor who ran 10 sets of books. If you can't hold it in one hand, it can't hold you in a crisis. Rule 5, keep more cash than feels reasonable. This is where we return to Hetty Green. By 1907, she had been called every name the financial press could invent. Miser, crone, witch. The Witch of Wall Street was her most famous nickname. The men at the top of American finance thought she was pathological. She kept obscene amounts of cash, tens of millions of dollars, in an era when that represented a meaningful percentage of the entire country's liquidity, and refused to put it to work in the complex instruments her peers were chasing. Then, October 1907 happened. A run on the Knickerbocker Trust cascaded into the worst banking panic the country had seen in a generation. Stock prices collapsed nearly 50%. The most famous financiers in America, the ones who had mocked Hetty, were insolvent within days. Some jumped from windows, others went to J.P. Morgan begging for rescue. Hetty was buying. She had the cash no one else had. The modern version of this story carries a name you already know. As of late 2025, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, was holding over $350 billion in cash and short-term treasuries. Verify. Exact Q4 2025 figure. One of the largest corporate cash positions in American history. Every financial commentator on earth has spent the last 2 years asking why he's hoarding it. He isn't hoarding. He's preparing. The industry's standard rule is to hold 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. The forbidden version, the rule the actually rich actually follow, is to hold 12 to 24 months of cash during periods of high asset valuations, even when it means sitting out of a rising market. Kenji, a 36-year-old warehouse supervisor in Modesto, got mocked relentlessly by his coworkers in 2021 and 2022 for holding $40,000 in a high-yield savings account, instead of putting it to work. In March of 2023, when regional banks were collapsing and tech stocks had cratered 35%, he bought at prices his coworkers were panic selling into. His $40,000 in cash became roughly $62,000 of positions within 18 months. His coworkers were still recovering losses well into 2024. The cost of cash is always visible. The lost return you could have theoretically earned. The benefit of cash is always invisible. The forced sale you never had to make. The opportunity you were actually able to take, the sleep you got in March of 2020, in March of 2023, and in every other month when everyone else was panicking. Cash is not the absence of a strategy. Cash is the strategy. It's what lets every other rule on this list survive a bad year. You don't get rich by being fully invested. You stay rich by never being forced to sell. Rule 6, your biggest enemy isn't the market. It's your optimization. In 1720, Isaac Newton, the most brilliant mind of his century, the man who had mathematically described the motion of the planets, lost the modern equivalent of roughly $3 million in the South Sea bubble. He had actually bought in early, made a profit, sold his position cleanly. Then, watching everyone around him keep getting rich while he sat on his earned gains, he bought back in at the peak. The bubble burst within weeks. He lost nearly everything. He reportedly said afterward, "I can calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of men." Newton didn't lose to the market. He lost to his own optimization. Every year, Morningstar publishes a study called Mind the Gap. It measures the difference between the returns a mutual fund generates and the returns its actual investors experience. The two are not the same thing. The fund might return 9% a year, But the investors in that fund, moving in and out, selling during dips, buying during rallies, chasing last year's winners, routinely earn 1 to 2% less per year than the fund itself. The most recent edition of the study found an average behavior gap of roughly 1.1 percentage points annually across the last 10 years. Verify latest Mind the Gap figure. That sounds small. It isn't. Over a 30-year investing career, a 1.5% behavior gap on $500 monthly contributions costs the average investor roughly $280,000 in foregone wealth. That is the real price of optimization. Yolanda is a 39-year-old school counselor in Savannah who spent 8 years, from 2015 to 2023, rotating between the best mutual funds based on Morningstar ratings, financial podcasts, and newsletter recommendations. Every 6 months, she moved into whatever had been outperforming for the prior year. Her actual annualized return over that period was 6.1%. The S&P 500 index over the same period returned roughly 10.4% annually. Verify. Her optimization, her constant, well-intentioned, educated optimization cost her about $73,000 in foregone growth. Enough to put her daughter through a year of college? Gone. Because she kept chasing what had already happened. The lesson of Newton in the South Sea bubble isn't about bubbles. It's about a very particular kind of smart person who believes that intelligence protects them from behavioral traps. It doesn't. It makes them worse. Because a smart person has more confidence to act on bad impulses. The rule is almost insultingly simple. Once you've made a good long-term decision about your money, the most expensive thing you can do is revise it. The market rewards patience. Optimization punishes it. Rule 7. The One Fund Doctrine. In 2016, J.L. Collins published The Simple Path to Wealth, a book built on a single, borderline heretical premise. If you put every dollar you saved into one low-cost total stock market index fund, did not touch it, did not optimize it, did not diversify into any additional complexity, and simply kept contributing for 30 years, you would end up wealthier than roughly 85 to 90% of professional fund managers. This is not a marketing claim. It is a mathematical fact reproduced across decades of financial academic research, most famously by Vanguard founder Jack Bogle before his death in 2019. The industry responded to this evidence the way industries always respond to truth that threatens revenue. It buried it under noise, under sophistication, under a blizzard of target date funds, sector ETFs, factor tilts, smart beta strategies, and alternative investments that all, coincidentally, generated higher fees than a plain index fund. Carla is a 55-year-old retired librarian in Minneapolis. She started investing in 1995 with a simple plan. Every month, without fail, she put $550 into Vanguard's 500 index fund. Nothing else. She didn't touch it during the dot-com crash. She didn't touch it in 2008. She didn't touch it in 2020. She didn't touch it in 2022. She retired in 2023 with just over $1.1 million. Verify rough contribution math. Her coworker Gwen, who started the same year with the same monthly contribution but spent 3 decades diversifying, rebalancing, and moving between actively managed funds, retired the same year with roughly $640,000. Same starting salary, same time horizon, same market. Different outcomes, because Gwen's additional complexity cost her about $460,000 over 30 years. The One Fund Doctrine is forbidden because it indicts an entire industry. If a librarian in Minneapolis outperforms 85% of Harvard-trained portfolio managers by buying one fund and ignoring it for 30 years, the case for the $4 trillion wealth management industry becomes very difficult to make. But the math is the math. For the vast majority of people, the correct portfolio is not clever. It is almost embarrassingly boring. A single total market or S&P 500 index fund, held for decades, automatically funded, never touched, has beaten nearly every sophisticated alternative over every 30-year period in modern financial history. You do not need the genius version. The genius version was designed to be sold to you, not to work for you. The most radical financial move you can make in 2026 is to stop believing that your money deserves complexity. It doesn't. It deserves quiet. The plan that wins is the one you forget you have. You came here believing that financial stability in an unstable economy was something you had to build up to, that it required sophistication, strategies, more accounts, more knowledge, more moves. 20 minutes later, the picture is almost unrecognizable. Stability didn't require more. It required less. Fewer decisions, fewer accounts, fewer subscriptions, fewer moves, a smaller pile of rules, held more deeply. The next obstacle isn't learning these 7 rules. You have them now. The next obstacle is surviving the industry pressure to abandon them the moment the next shiny financial product appears. The next app, the next fund, the next opportunity of a lifetime that just happens to require you to make things more complicated than they need to be. Every financial message you encounter from this point forward will be testing whether you can hold this quiet. You clicked on a video about minimalist money rules because you sensed that something in the sophistication machine was lying to you. The truth turned out to be worse than a lie. The machine wasn't lying about what works. It was hiding what works, because what works doesn't generate fees. Here is the one thought to carry into the rest of your day. The things that are truly meant to protect you almost never come with a subscription model. If anything in the last 20 minutes rearranged something inside your head, if you are looking at your subscriptions differently, your accounts differently, your cash position differently, come back. This channel builds in the same direction every week. Quiet truths about money for women the industry was never built for. The loudest financial advice will always make the biggest promises. The quiet rules are the ones that actually keep you standing.